Hi, everyone. My name is Steve Seger, and I'm the Director of Acquisitions and Investor Relations here at SNS. Today, I'm joined by Jered Sturm, CEO and co-founder of SNS. Jered, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to having this conversation, and thanks for the opportunity and putting it together.
Yeah, so this interview is really just going to be in conversational format. I'm going to sit with Jered and just talk about property management and best practices here at SNS. So one thing that we talk about a lot at SNS is corporate smart and property smart. And this video today is going to hit a lot on why SNS is property smart. We have that background in the trades, and I think that this is going to be very helpful for investors. And it's really important because you want to have a partner that has this skill set. Jered, is there anything you want to add before we jump into this?
Yeah, I think you hit on it, and I'll expand.
Yeah.
Is to say, when you're a passive investor looking to partner with a general partner, you have to ask yourself, what skill set are you looking for them to contribute to the partnership?
Mhm.
And I think that's what you mean by the combination of corporate smart and property smart. Contrasting that to maybe other firms that have the corporate smarts, maybe a general partner that worked for a large institution in the corporate office and then tries to transition into being a full general partner where they have full control and operational control.
Mhm.
What they lack is something that we have, which is that on-site operational experience. And I think that's what you mean by property smart, right? Combining, call it spreadsheet knowledge with boots on the ground knowledge to
Yep.
say what is actually possible to move the spreadsheet numbers to the best results that we can achieve for that partnership and that dynamic of what passive investors are looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to jump right in here. Jered, can you talk about, on top of that, a little bit into your background and how that plays directly into this, what we call property smart?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying boots on the ground, and I'd say that's a good lead into how I got started.
Mhm.
So it started as a maintenance technician 18 years ago,
Yeah.
so as entry level as you can get. But for another landlord in our market, Cincinnati, Ohio,
Mhm.
I was the guy fixing toilets, painting apartments, doing set outs, turnovers, those types of things. Learning the business from that angle,
Yeah.
and then use that skill set in the trades to start SNS as a company. But SNS was very organic growth, and what I mean by that is at one point, it was myself and my brother Andy, who's my business partner today, and we were the maintenance tech, we were the leasing professional, we were the property manager. And as the company grew, we were able to delegate off some of those, but we have a very kind of grassroots organic story where we know each of those roles, and we've honed the efficiency of each of those roles to the point that once they're efficient, we can delegate them off.
Mhm. So can you talk about a little bit those processes that you built out through working in each one of those roles, and maybe kind of expand on the kind of KPIs that we're tracking here?
Yeah, I think over years you figure out the best way to do it,
Mhm.
and you can't always expect a team member to operate it at the same exact level that we would as owners.
Yeah.
But you can set benchmarks to say, here's a sustainable metric that we can hold you accountable to achieving. And so going back to the maintenance technician as the example, so every role in our company will have 2 to 3 KPIs that we hold that role accountable to, specifically at the on-site level.
Mhm.
But since we're using my story, the maintenance tech story, we'll start with that one and
Yeah.
say a couple KPIs that we hold them accountable to is how fast they complete resident requested work orders. So if something's broken, a resident says, I need this fixed, how fast on average on a monthly window are they completing that?
Yeah.
And like last month, our whole maintenance team across 1,400 units averaged about 21 hours from the time the resident request was put in to the time it was completed. So obviously some were more than that, some were less than that,
Yeah.
but we're really happy with that because our target is 36 hours.
Mhm.
And all of that comes down to customer service, resident retention, and how that then trickles down to the bottom line. So understanding what is achievable at an on-site level, because we've been there and done that,
Yeah.
we can hold our team accountable to say 36 hours is the mark. And that's significantly below industry standards, which then just makes us competitive from a
Mhm.
customer service standpoint. So we got how fast they do them, how many they do. So we track that number as well. So
Yeah.
we have like speed, quality, and quantity. So speed's how fast, quantity is how many they do, and then quality we actually track from resident surveys. So a 5 out of 5 would be the highest,
Mhm.
but every work order completed sends a text message and an email to the resident, says how did we do. They're able to give us that feedback, and we hold our team accountable to average a 4.5 out of 5 on all work orders. So those KPIs, because we have the property smarts,
Yeah.
we're able to say, here's the exact metric that we know we can live up to. And if we do that, how it impacts the corporate smart, which is the spreadsheet and the bottom line and the forced depreciation that so many of the limited partners partner with us for.
Mhm. And hearing that, how has it been? I mean, it probably takes a special kind of person to fill the kind of roles where we have these KPIs that we set, and they're not easy. But how exactly with our hiring and our kind of core values is it difficult to find people that fit into our organization well with those?
Um, it was more difficult in the past than it is now. So
Yeah.
as we've grown, we've created a reputation of we are where the top performing property management professionals in Cincinnati work.
Yeah.
And so if you are a top performer that wants to be acknowledged for your top performance,
Yeah.
you start hearing about this organization that has the systems in place to track the numbers to show when you're a top performer
Yep.
and acknowledge that through both just general praise but also compensation. You're going to seek out this organization to say, yeah, I'd rather go there. And so
Yeah.
we can continue with the maintenance tech example, but if you have two maintenance techs and you have one who sleeps in the maintenance shop half the day and the other guy who really is working hard to fix everything and work and achieve a lot, satisfy resident requests quickly and knock out 10 of them a day, but they make the same amount of money because the organization they work for can't tell them apart.
Yeah.
What we have seen is the person who can do a bunch and is really top performer will find us because we have the systems in place to acknowledge them. And that's not just maintenance, right? Like this is applicable to all of the positions, but we're using that as an example.
Okay. Can you kind of expand on that then and talk about how maybe a leasing professional would be acknowledged?
Yeah, leasing professional is like the entry level for the office staff for on site.
Yeah.
And so we're tracking metrics for conversion rates. So think of a sales funnel, how many leads you get, how many are converted into applications, and then how many of those are converted into leases.
Yep.
So we're able to track that and actually have a live stream of it. So it updates daily so the whole team can see where they land on this. Same for maintenance. So that's a big part of how we create a culture of like healthy competitiveness. So conversion rates and then the speed of time of which when the renovation or turnover finishes to the time the resident moves in is a metric that a lot of the commission is based off for our leasing team.
Yeah.
And so we target 7 days or less from when the construction finishes to when the resident moves in. But I know that our team averages 2.5 days.
Okay.
So they're trying to squeeze that time down, which squeezes vacancy costs down, which squeezes lots of other accounts on the income statement down to be more efficient, to force appreciation for the value of which then we strip in a refinance and return capital to investors.
And with there being so many high performers in this organization, I would imagine a lot of them want growth and they want opportunities to continue to grow and develop. How are we doing that here to set ourselves apart from other organizations?
Yeah, I mean, big part of it is being able to see who is performing at a high level to be considered for that next role. It's not always a perfect transition, right? You might have a maintenance technician that's a phenomenal maintenance technician. It doesn't mean they're ready to be a leader or supervisor or whatever that next role is up. But it does give you the opportunity to acknowledge that they know how to work hard and they know how to be effective in their role. So then maybe we can say that's the type of person that we want to see in a supervisor role. So we have the system in place to acknowledge this person's performing really well in their current position. Then we're rolling out a program called Jumpstart, which allows us to invest through our training and development managers back into those people. So if we say this is a great person, we want on our team, we want to give them the growth opportunity, but they lack in leadership, we have now a program that they can apply for and sign up for that then we supplement them with training and development to get them to that path. And the goal is to help with our overall employee retention, because we know that most of the top performers that sit down and join our team, if you ask them what they want in an organization, they say, I want growth opportunity. And so we really try to give them that by having those systems and then having that process for Jumpstart.
One thing I'm kind of curious about, pivoting a little bit, is how are we day to day? I mean, from a technology standpoint, what do we use to, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of data out there and you're talking about being able to track it. What does SNS use and what kind of, I guess, systems are we on right now?
So we're using AppFolio as our property management software.
Yeah.
And we try to get as much as we can into AppFolio. So that way it's easier to train on. So when you bounce around to a bunch of softwares, it makes training and onboarding slower and less efficient. So AppFolio, we've been on for about 7 years, and they've done a really good job of advancing their technology in recent years, specifically for data and analytics. So we like that, and it gives us a lot of information that we're able to pull from.
Do you see any sort of new trends kind of occurring in the property management space, whether it's from a technology standpoint or just on the construction side of things? What are you kind of seeing out there today?
So one trend that I see, at least in our market, and I'm
Yeah.
only focused in Cincinnati, is like
Hmm.
there is a generational divide between ownership groups,
Yeah.
especially the large ones. It's kind of like, and I think it has something to do with 2008, 9, 10, Great Recession, and this gap where
Uh-huh.
some of the older generation, the baby boom generation, who had really established themselves and had a good foundation, they made it through that. Um, Maybe the middle generation didn't make it through that, and then now there's a younger generation, which I would put SNS in that bucket,
Yeah.
who is coming up and trying to fill this gap. But what I've noticed in a trend is like the more established organizations are still they lack technology. They're not adopting data and analytics at the same pace that the younger groups are,
Hmm.
and they have a lot. The older groups and the more established groups have a lot of competitive advantage from like just capital and resources and the foundation that they built.
Yeah.
So one way that we're being competitive is leaning into kind of the new age of business, which is collecting data and analytics and understanding how all of these moving parts that we're working on day to day we can tweak.
Hmm.
And so probably a third of our industry is still working on paper, which is just crazy because we've never done that. But um, yeah, I mean, to give you a specific example of how this might play out is um, recently we were able to troubleshoot collections at our organization. So one of our goals for 2025 was to drive delinquency down
Hmm.
and overall, things put into bad debt, which go into collections.
Yeah.
We wanted to drive that number down. So looking at the back end data and analytics, we're able to look back years and say, of all of our residents, we learned that um, residents with a credit score between 550 and 575 were resulting in 60% of our um, delinquency, which then converts to bad debt, which converts to collections.
Yeah.
But that bucket of credit score between 550 and 575 was only accounting for about 11% of our residents.
Hmm.
So 11% of our residents were accounting for 60% of our collections.
Wow.
And so we said, let's move our credit score,
Yeah.
and then we can see our delinquency come down. And I just think there's a lot of organizations that have experienced a lot of success in their operations, and they
Hmm.
become complacent, and they're not looking for those small tweaks to take their delinquency and make it 5% better or 10% better, and they're just kind of like, it is what it is,
Yeah.
and here's our minimum criteria. And so that's an example of how we're using the data and analytics to just subtly improve the spreadsheet.
Hmm.
You had mentioned property smart, corporate smart,
Yeah.
and I'll bring up an example where you and I were touring a property, and I think it highlights what that means to us. But whenever I'm touring a property, I'm always an apartment community. I'm always asking to go see the maintenance shop,
Hmm.
and I think that's a rare thing. At least the real estate brokers will tell me not a lot of buyers ask to go do that. But when I'm in a maintenance shop, just with my background experience, I can look around and see what parts and what tools are in that shop,
Yeah.
and it really gives you a level of understanding of what's maybe behind the walls or under the floor
Uh-huh.
that other groups will either have to wait till due diligence to find or miss altogether.
Hmm.
And so if I see a bunch of broken plumbing augers all over the place, it might indicate that there's collapsed pipes underneath the ground or failing infrastructure from a plumbing standpoint.
Yeah.
And I think that's just an example of property smart to corporate smart, where you can lean on our experience in the field to make sure we're protecting what ends up in that spreadsheet.
Yeah. I remember touring a property recently. We walked in and there was 4 or 5 fans sitting around, and you're like, they probably have a leak issue or
Mm-hmm.
some sort of flooding over there. I'm like,
Yeah.
I would have never have seen that. And
Yeah.
I think we've kind of talked on how exactly do you gain this property smart without having that trade background. And I think it's really difficult. I'm someone that has that corporate background, but with you with that property smart background, I think there's a lot of groups that it's hard to make up for that gap. So
Mm-hmm.
um, interesting, and I'm going to continue to try to explore that more. Do you have any kind of thoughts on that?
And it doesn't have to be specific to the trades. Like that's my
Yeah.
story, but there are plenty of people who have spent decades, if not more, in the property management industry from like a leasing or property manager
Yeah.
perspective, and they just understand things. And it could be as simple as like you get a corporate smart person that's looking at a spreadsheet and they say, oh, we can eliminate some of these dumpsters on site to reduce our waste expense. And someone who has all these years of experience will say, no, you can't downsize those because it needs to be able to fit a couch, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, those are the types of things. And it may seem small,
Mhm.
but if you don't have a dumpster on site that can fit a couch, then garbage starts backlogging.
Yeah.
And then you think, okay, then curb appeal takes a hit. And then someone pulls up to lease the apartment and says, I don't want to live somewhere where it looks trashy.
Yep.
And then they don't rent the apartment, then vacancy goes up, and then the snowball all compounds because you had someone that didn't understand that you need a dumpster that can fit a couch, right? And so for me, I know because of all my user experience, like I need an 8-yard dumpster that can fit a couch.
Yeah.
So if people downsize those to 4 yards or 6 yards, they're going to run into this problem. And we just see this from those who live in spreadsheets but haven't been on the property level.
Yeah, I think one thing you brought up was you were talking about maintenance techs before, and I've heard that as an industry, the average age of maintenance techs is getting higher and higher. What kind of trends are you seeing at SNS, and then just more so outside of our organization, and how maybe are we addressing that?
Yeah, I mean the trades in general, so not even just maintenance and apartments, but like construction, service industry, unfortunately is heavily male dominated, and then also the average age I believe is in the mid to high 50s at this point.
Yeah.
Specifically on apartment maintenance, it requires almost being a jack of all trades, which is becoming even more rare because those who are entering the trades industry are specializing. So they'll do specifically HVAC and maybe even specifically like chillers.
Yeah.
And that's all they know. And that doesn't work to apply to ours. And so one of the industry trends that we have to be aware of is like a supply and demand imbalance from skilled tradesmen that can do multiple trades.
Yeah.
When we hire half for competency and then half for values alignment. So the average age of our maintenance professional in our organization is about 27, I think is the number. So significantly less than the industry, and that comes with less experience. And the question is like, how do you support that? Like we can't just find the really young person that has all of the skills. It doesn't always exist.
Yeah.
You might find that one or two outlier, but what we've done is we have a whole training and development department. We have a training and development manager who has a lot of skills to help support, bring these people up. We do continuous education in our corporate office where we're sitting today. We're building out a training facility where we have like real furnaces, real ACs, real appliances, sinks and plumbing and electric where they can come in and teach them. And then back to the data and analytics. If you're doing work orders on paper, you have no idea what your maintenance team is doing.
Yeah.
But in our system, everything is electronic. And what we know is about 80% of all work orders, and we do tens of thousands of them every year, can be boiled down to about 30 tasks that are just repetitive, right? It's the same things over and over.
Yeah.
And so if we know what those 30 tasks are and we build our training facilities to address those 30 tasks, we can take a young guy who doesn't have experience and get them up and running to get 80% of the workload, and then supplement that 20% with a more skilled supervisor, which then we encourage collaborative working together, and just with time, that 80% goes to 90%, which goes to 95%. And so that's how we develop our maintenance team. But yeah, I mean, it's wild when you think about 10,000 work orders, and you really can boil it down to where 80% of them are about 30 things that you need to teach.
Yeah.
And so that having that back end analytics to tell us what those things are makes us more effective, makes the people coming into the organization feel more empowered and prepared. And then something that you're probably aware of that we do as well is in our interview process, we're also testing them on those 30 things to see like, where are you at with these most important things? So that way we're not saying like, how much do you know about chillers when we never work on chillers, right? That's not applicable to your role. And that helps us be successful in our hiring too.
So you talked about a training center here at our corporate headquarters. What does that look like?
It's just a room that's probably 300-400 square feet. It's not huge, but there's stations that are like HVAC station, plumbing station, electrical station, and those most common work orders that come up, we want to make sure our team knows how to address those. So it might be like adding coolant to an HVAC system when it's not cooling properly in the summer.
Yeah.
And we have a station where they can work on that in a safe space without, injuring themselves or messing up a system, or, electrical, right? Like we're going to do it where they can see how the circuit works without the wire going behind the wall and disappearing. And so then they understand what is actually happening behind the wall before they start messing with electrical.
Oh, that's going to be cool. Are there a lot of other groups doing stuff like that, or
we're aware of a few? I would say we're on the smaller side of the groups that actually do it.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think where I'm most excited about doing it better than those other groups is combining the data and analytics to say, we won't just build out a training facility, we'll build out a training facility for the exact things that you need to know.
Okay.
Because I have seen other groups where it's like some person in a corporate office says, here's the things we need to work on or need to put into our training facility. And it just simply doesn't align with what the individual is going to see on site. And it could be as simple as like, you buy a 1970s property, right? The vintage of wiring, the vintage of plumbing, the vintage of HVAC systems is going to be very different than if you just went to buy or build a brand new property today.
Mm-hmm.
But if you build a training facility with all of those things in today's equipment,
Yeah.
train them on that, and then send them out to work on 50-year-old properties, it's like as soon as they open the furnace, like, that's not what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
You know, safety standards have changed, the way they do things change. So
Mm-hmm.
we're going to make sure that we're aligning all of that to what they'll actually experience in the field.
No VR goggles or anything?
We explored it, but it just still required that touch and feel.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm going to pivot a little bit, looking more big picture. I hear a lot of property management companies talk about vertical integration over and over. That term gets thrown out. What does that mean to SNS? And can you kind of expand on what that looks like here and out on our different communities?
Yeah, I think everybody uses it differently. So I think it's a good question to ask. For us, what it means is we control all aspects of the operations that then hit the income statement, which then derives the value of the asset that our investors are investing in and we're investing in. And so for us, that's going to be main two verticals are going to be property management, so the on-site operations, and then construction. So I think most groups would say they're vertically integrated if they just have property management.
Yeah.
And then they may outsource construction and renovations to a vendor, which is normal. And I would say that is vertical integration, but we take it one step further and lean on our background in the trades to build out our property management company, which services only the assets we own. And then also the construction arm of our company, which goes in and does these value add renovations, which we control with our own W-2 employees. We control that process to keep it extremely efficient from like cost per labor, materials, but also even more importantly, time.
Yeah.
So we're very quick at our turnovers and quick at our repositionings, which for most investors, they'll know if you're slow in those, it can be very costly.
Yeah. And I imagine that over time, you've continued to build up those efficiencies. Are there any examples that come to mind that you think will be good to share here?
It could be as simple as material selection, right? So like if you're laying flooring, right, if you're laying hundreds of thousands of square feet of flooring every year because we're doing so many apartments, the picking the flooring choice that installs easy, quickly, cuts easy, quickly, and doesn't clicks together really well could be a simple choice. But even just our years of experience, taking it one step further, we select the right flooring that's easy to install, and then we give our turnover teams, who are our tradesmen on site doing these renovations, a very clear scope of work and outline of even when that material gets delivered, you take all those boxes of flooring and you put it in this corner of the room because we're going to lay from the opposite corner to that, and you don't have to then move the boxes twice. And I think that's just like very small. It might save a total of 20 minutes, but if you do that type of thing across lots of examples, you end up shaving off an entire day, which can have a massive impact over hundreds of units.
And I don't think it would be a property management discussion without me forcing you to share the example about the energy drinks on site. Can you bring up that example too?
Yeah. So it wasn't me, but so my brother, Andy, business partner, and currently our COO, is fanatic. One of our core values in the property management company is continuously improving. So he's fanatic about continuously improving our efficiencies in all of our operations, including the renovations. And while we average 2.5 days for a full gut remodel on apartments, he's going on site to look at efficiencies and ways we could potentially trim that down even more. And so he goes to the property, he goes into the apartment, he's watching the guys work, kind of talking to them, how's this going, how's this material work, blah, blah, blah. And he sees on the counter several Gatorades and some Red Bull cans, and he kind of asks them, where are you getting those? And they say, oh, at the gas station up at the corner. And so he's doing the math in his head of like, okay, when they leave and drive to the corner, how many minutes is that taking? What is that costing us in payroll? What are we losing in efficiency? Because the person who left seems to always have the tool or the material that you need in their car. And so the end result is when we make our material order, when our project managers create the scope of work with the material order, now from our supplier, just a 8-pack of Gatorade and a whatever pack of Red Bull is sitting on top of that pallet and saran wrapped in with all of the construction material. And it helps with our employee retention because they're happy, because they feel well taken care of, because they're getting the drinks that they like, they're well caffeinated, so they're ready to go and work. And then we don't lose the efficiencies on guys leaving, coming, going, and they're just there to do what they're really good at, which is turnover apartments. So it's an obsession to find opportunities to make it more efficient, and that doesn't always mean like squeezing our people to work harder. It means finding a better process to make it easier on them. And a lot of times we just have a vision for that because we've been there in those apartments, turning those apartments and looking for those types of things for 16 years now.
And with us placing such a heavy emphasis on being vertically integrated and having our property management in-house, one, why do we do that? And two, what exactly do we gain from that? I'm probably going to have another video at some point with you breaking down more in depth what we charge for our property management fee, but could you just discuss that a little bit?
So the reason we do it is because property management and control of those operations is how we drive NOI, net operating income, up by reducing expenses or increasing income. And the better we do that, the more the property is worth. And that's what we really care about. Our property management company, SNS Management, is break even on a good day, not profitable on an average day. But the reason we have it is because we know that controlling those operations and where we make the majority of our capital and money is through value creation and our equity ownership in these deals. And so when we're able to take a $10 million property and make it a $20 million property, the upside that we achieve is really what we're chasing. And what we've seen is third-party management companies simply just don't care to put forth the amount of effort required to force appreciation at the capacity and speed that we're doing it. And at the end of the day, we're balancing our 1,400 units at, we're targeting for 2025 a 98-point-something% occupancy rate. And it's just like people hear that and they say that's not achievable, and yet we just continue to do it. And it's because we have all these systems to hold people accountable. We know it's achievable. We know how to reverse engineer to it because we control those steps. If I were to go out and hire a third-party management company and tell them I want to hit 98-point-something% occupancy in 2025, they would say, like, that's not achievable. We can't do it. Get realistic. We're going to put in a 5% vacancy rate. And the change between 2% vacancy and 5% vacancy to an NOI and the value creation is significant. And so just on that one account, you can have a massive impact.
Now, to kind of wrap things up, what are some of the biggest challenges we're running into today at the end of 2024 and leading into 2025? And where do you see the organization from a property management standpoint heading over the course of the next year?
I mean, this is specific to SNS, but we're at 1,400 units. So we're right at this tipping point where we see the ability to specialize rather than generalize from a property management on-site role perspective. What I mean by that is, like, we can shift into more of a corporate model. So rather than have a leasing professional at each of our assets, we can bring some of those responsibilities into the corporate office. And it could be as simple as, like, the property managers on site used to handle delinquency. But now we're big enough to where we can have an individual that specializes in delinquency handle delinquency for the whole portfolio in our corporate office. Or currently our leasing team is handling inbound phone calls, right? But we have 8 of them. And so everybody's a little bit different. We try to have systems and processes, but we have some people that are great at sales, but maybe not as empathetic to customer service needs. And so now at 1,400 units, we're kind of shifting into this specialization where we may have someone in the corporate office or multiple people in the corporate office answering those phone calls, just doing a slightly better job at it because that's all they do. And so what I'm really excited about is we have hit a scale where we can bring in even more efficiencies because of our economies of scale and our ability to let people specialize on what they're really good at and not ask them to do things that don't feed into what they're really great at.
I think I hit on everything that I was wanting to touch today. Is there anything else that you think would be valuable to our listeners here?
No, I mean, I think I'll just circle back to the beginning and the overall focus of this conversation, which is if you're a limited partner watching this and you're considering making a passive investment with a general partner, you got to ask yourself the question of, like, what do I want my partner to be doing in this partnership? What skill sets do they need to have to do that? And I just think that idea of property smart plays really well into, like, what you actually want to accomplish. Because, I'm a passive investor too. And so I know what that's like. And you just say, like, well, I'm handing my capital off for you, this individual, to take care of it. Do you know how to take care of it? And a lot of times I feel like some groups will know how to raise the capital, but then don't know how to actually do the business plan. And they delegate that off to some third-party management company that they cross their fingers and hope they'll care enough to get it done. And unfortunately, a lot of times it doesn't. So I appreciate the opportunity, and hopefully that resonates with our investors and potential investors who are looking to learn more about the property smart and why that contributes to the success that we have on the bottom line and ultimately the financial returns.
Well, Jered, thank you for your time today. We're going to try to continue to produce some more educational videos like this over the next year to try to give you guys a more in-depth look at what we're doing behind the scenes here at SNS. But we hope you enjoy this video, and we hope you guys have a good holiday coming up. And thanks a lot.
Thanks, everybody.